So Jim, tell us how did you become an artist? What led you towards this path?
Um, when I was a kid, um, I wasn't interested in art at all. I didn't think, I grew up kind of lower middle class and I never met an artist. So I didn't even really, artists for me were like Picasso and that kind of thing. And that was pretty much true through high school. Um, and so up to that point, I was interested in being an engineer, which my father was. And so I applied to engineering school. I went to engineering school and decided that the path of being an engineer would be too kind of narrow for me. And so a few years after I got a job in engineering, I started maybe 10 years actually. I started making my own work, and given that the only thing that I knew how to do was engineering, I thought I would explore what art could be like using engineering. And then over a 25-year period, really, from maybe 1990 to whenever 25 years is from that, I gradually started doing more and more art and less engineering. It was a very slow progression. I didn't actually call myself an artist till, I don't know, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. Again, because I still had in the back of my mind that artists were inherently brilliant and famous. And so had kind of a thing for not, I called myself an engineer.
Fascinating. I can see how that would apply to the piece at the airport. I could see an engineering background in that now.
The one thing that I did do in college, art-wise, was I was very interested in video and film, and so I studied film and video in college, kind of as a side thing. And so when I started making electronic art, the way that I've always seen that, and I've said this many times, but it's really true, was combining my kind of interests in video and moving images and film with my electronic background.
All right, so back to the title of your piece, The Journey. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you. And did you come up with the title before you started working, during? What was the process?
So the journey was in the original call, and after spending months trying to come up with a better title for it, or one that was unique and was more specific to the work, we failed at that. So we kept the original title of the journey. Part of the notion in the original call was that the artwork have a wayfinding function. And I remember, it's kind of a funny story. During the kind of initial presentation, I flew to San Diego with some other artists, and they were describing all of the projects. I'm usually pretty quiet in the audience, but they specifically said that they wanted this work to have a major wayfinding function. And I did something I never do. I kind of raised my hand and said, artists don't do signage. But having said that, I think that I ended up doing pretty much exactly what the airport was hoping for, in that it does really have a wayfinding function.
Okay, so a little bit more about that. How did you come up with the actual idea? Had you ever worked on art on the ceiling and all of the electronics behind it? How did that all come together?
I had never worked before this project with art on the ceiling. And one of the things about electronic art is there's generally a major infrastructure that's inherently part of the visible work. And so we tried very hard to create a work, me and my team, that where the infrastructure kind of went away. And so, and I had been working with low resolution at the time, meaning individual pixels. And so this was a way of dealing with that very long stretch of, I think, 700 feet from end to end. It was to do this kind of scattered virtual ribbon.
I volunteer at the booth right by your piece, and I do notice people looking at it. You can see them looking up. And one day I was volunteering and I saw a man with his young child, maybe 2 years old, and they were walking down Terminal 2 West, and the father looked up and then he knelt down next to his child and was pointing up. And for several seconds, it was so fascinating to watch. The child was completely mesmerized and just was staring at your work. Meantime, you know, people were walking by, but they were also looking up, and it was just really fascinating because your piece definitely does get, I would say, the most attention, because, as you say, it's like this natural wayfinding piece, but it's also just it's like watching an aquarium. Sometimes it's just you can just get so lost in it. So, is that the kind of experience you were hoping that the general public and passengers at the airport would have, or?
Yeah, it was a challenge to do a work that would be engaging, have movement, not overwhelming, but still have people kind of notice it. And finding that balance, needless to say, was something that you couldn't predict ahead of time. So I like the fact that I've always said I've had works at museums, etc. And my favorite audience that I look for are the museum guards, which you have your equivalent there, and kids. And those are the people that I hope to, if I can engage them, people who live with it every day, and then people who are just paying attention to everything around them equally. I have to say, working with the San Diego airport, and I'm not just saying this, was the best experience I had, because the art program, how can I say this, wasn't just kind of shoved under everything else. I kind of felt like it was equal with the architects in terms of working on this project, and I commend the airport for kind of keeping that relationship through the process.
Why do you think right now, why is art so important at this time, in this moment of history?
That's a good question, and I think public art, when it's successful, engages people kind of beyond the physical space that they're in. Maybe a window to somewhere else where they can have a brief moment of escape is the wrong word, but a brief moment of engagement that is generally visual.
What do you think is the best compliment you've ever received, either regarding a piece of art that you've created or just a compliment for you as an artist?
Well, I haven't received it very often, but certainly the best compliment that I've received, I can't say how many times, was that your work changed my life, and it, caused me to look at things differently. Or I've done some works that were kind of intensely personal, and affected people in a very strong way for the same reasons that I kind of did them, and in a maybe therapeutic way, even kind of. And those are also maybe the best compliments, where I can kind of share my experiences and have that shared experience be helpful or useful for someone else.
Yeah, yeah, human connection with someone, that's a huge compliment. Brilliant. Well, you've done an amazing job from the work that I've seen. So I wish you the best of continued success. And if you're ever back at the airport, let us know.